Hello, I'm Brigantia Blackbird of Blackbird's Brew. Happy Friday and welcome to Wicca 202. This week's class is about the Carnation, which might be one of the most underrated flowers ever. We don't really take much notice of them except as, maybe a filler for grocery store bouquets or as an inexpensive alternative to roses on Valentine's Day. But I think that carnations deserve a little bit more dignity and respect, especially since they are one of the plants that are specifically associated with witches and witchcraft. That makes them very relevant to us. And we should never forget that even the humblest of plants still has a magical nature and it does serve a spiritual purpose. The fact that carnations are also relatively easy to come by and they're not really costly is all the more reason to make use of them. So let's begin with their physical properties. The scientific name for the carnation plant is Dianthus carophyllus. Other names for carnations are grenadine, clove pink, gillies, gillyflower, Jove's flower, Nelka, scaffold flower, and sops in wine. Carnations are native to the Mediterranean, and they will grow in hardiness zones 7 to 10 as perennials. If it's colder, they're more treated as annuals, or they might need some special care if you're going to overwinter them. This flower likes well-drained soil that is alkaline with a soil pH of 7 to 8. Carnations will grow well in full sun or in partial shade. The blooms have ruffled edges and they are usually white, pink, or red in color. The white carnations are often dyed so then they appear as whatever color, but they start out as white. The plant is resistant to deer, but rabbits are known to enjoy nibbling on the leaves, so plan accordingly, I guess. Now, centuries ago in Europe, carnations were used to treat burns, and during the reign of Elizabeth I, carnations were used to spice wine and ale as a substitute for cloves because cloves were much more expensive. So there's a long history of usage here. Now for our spiritual, magical properties and our various uses for this plant. Its energy is projective, so its energy is going outwards. It's associated with both the sun and the planet Saturn, the element of fire, and for the zodiac signs of Aries, Sagittarius, and Capricorn. And also it is primarily associated with the god Jupiter, or, Zeus. Its powers are primarily protection, strength, healing, friendship, marriage, and a very deep-rooted love. Interestingly, according to the lore, the protective aspects of carnation were specifically about protecting against witches and witchcraft, which is likely an idea that was inherited from medieval notions. However, that being said, it is specifically associated with us for that purpose. And let's be real, practitioners of the craft, we're just people like everyone else. And, not everyone is ethical. And some people sometimes they make poor choices, magically speaking, if they are upset or very angry, and they can find themselves doing things they wouldn't ordinarily do. And while I hope that no one who's watching this video ever finds themselves in a position to having to defend themselves from that kind of thing, especially from another practitioner, but I would much rather us have the information and not need it than to need it and not have it. So. Another motivation for bringing this up is because we should understand what our vulnerabilities are. Now, granted, carnations can be used for protection generally, but we should be aware of the lore in which they can be used to deflect our own magic or to limit our sphere of influence. There are always limitations to everything in nature, and I think it's very foolhardy for us not to be aware of our own. Now, also speaking of the lore, there are stories that people used to wear carnations in hopes that it would prevent them from meeting death at the end of a hangsman's noose. That gave me some questions about what kind of line of work these people were in. Were they engaged in professions that perhaps would make that kind of end a bit more likely for them? But moving on, carnations can be used as an all-purpose ingredient for protective spells and for protective rituals. For healing, carnations can be placed in the room where the ill or the injured person is in order to promote their recovery and to help elevate their own energy levels. More energy in the body means they are going to be able to fight off their illness, or their body will be able to repair their injury. I can't talk today, gangs. But the point is that by raising up the energy levels of the patient, it is going to enable them to fight off and heal from whatever it is they are needing to heal from. You can also place carnation blooms in sachets and incenses for very similar healing purposes. Or, and honestly, that's even something you could use for protective purposes. And also, you can place fresh carnations, red are usually the best, onto your altar when performing healing rituals. So, those are the basics on the carnations. Now, for our homework, December 2nd through December 8th. Number 1. Do some independent research and learn about at least one thing, whether it's magical or mundane, about carnations that wasn't covered in this video. Now, I did a very bare bones presentation here, so there should be plenty of things for you to discover. 2. Do you live in a climate that would enable you to grow carnations? And if you do, really consider planting it in your garden next year, or maybe growing it from seed as an annual. Because if you do grow your own magical ingredients, it can be more economical in the long run. And even if you have to treat them as an annual, if you collect the seeds from the plants that you have grown, then you can replant those seeds next year, and you can start having this nice cycle. It's much cheaper than having to buy everything fresh every year, or having to buy the actual plant every year. And then 3, reflect upon your present circumstances. Is there anything in your life that would make it helpful for you to draw upon the magical properties of carnations? A journal about possible usage, brainstorm some ideas about how you might use it for your own specific circumstances, and don't be afraid to get creative. So that will do it for carnations. Next week, the class will focus on owls. So I hope you will be back for that. In the meantime, if you have comments, questions, or concerns, please let me know in the comments section down below. Or better yet, come and join our Gilded group. You will find not only me, but you will find other experienced practitioners of witchcraft there, people who have practiced paganism for a myriad of decades, and you will also encounter other content creators who you might want to take an interest in. So lots to explore there. I hope you do come to see us soon, but that will do it for this video, and I will see you next time. Bye.